All right. So if you're 50 plus and you've been laid off or maybe downsized or whatever they want to call it, fired even, or maybe you're just at a point in your life where you're thinking about a career change, or maybe you're at the beginning of a career change. I know there's a ton of fear that goes along with that whole scenario, right? And if you don't have any retirement savings or anything like that, even more so, right? So the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's going to be July 4th here very soon. Actually, later this week. So, at the time of this recording, and I wanted to share my story about how I got fired and got let go. And I want to share that with you because I think it can help you kind of, deal with some of that fear, right? I think there's always going to be a level of fear, but, you know, um, regardless, I think my story can kind of help give you a little bit of insight and maybe even, encouragement for lack of a better word. So anyway, my story, back in 2013, it was July 3rd. Um, I think it was a Wednesday morning because we were going to be going camping. I had small kids at the time. My wife is back home because, we're getting ready to go camping for the weekend. And, you got the camper all ready to go. It's basically like, hey, I'm going to get off work at noon today and we're hitting the road. And we got a long weekend of hanging out with our friends and doing things. Well, in the morning, um, HR and my boss walk in and they both basically gave me the news. And, typical, almost exactly the way you hear the stories all the time, right? They come in, they give you the news. And it wasn't like a huge surprise to me, but that's a whole other story. But, it's the whole thing. They're basically sitting there waiting for me to pack my box or fill up boxes with stuff from my desk that I've had for, like I said, 17 years. There's a lot of stuff to pack up and take along. And it was just kind of a surreal feeling. And I walked out of there and that's what I was thinking about the rest of the weekend, right? It was kind of a tough weekend. I did have severance, so it wasn't all like horrible. I mean, right? There's a ticking clock on that severance, but it wasn't like I had to make any decisions. But either way, when you have three small kids and a wife and a family and all that stuff, it's kind of like, all right, we got some things to think about over the weekend. So it was pretty difficult to relax over the weekend. I think I was able to, um, you know, make do. But yeah. So anyway, I tell you that because that was it was 14 years ago coming up this Wednesday. And I've learned so many things since then, and I've never had to take another job. I've been self-employed ever since. And, I learned a really super important lesson from back then. And it was basically like, you can't rely on an employer. You can't, that old paradigm is dead, right? And that was 14 years ago. It's even worse today than it was then. And it just taught me that I need to be self-sufficient. And that's what I've been able to do for the last 13 or 14 years. So I guess I'm just telling you this because it is possible to turn turn these lemons into lemonade, as they say. And another kind of a interesting thing that kind of came out of this whole experience, some more lemonade, if you will, is over the years, as I've been self-employed, a lot of people are always asking me, they're super curious, right? Because when I went self-employed, there was a smaller percentage of the population that was a remote worker, self-employed and, the whole lot. And everybody's curious, like, well, what are you going to do for retirement, Corey? And it's like, well, I never really had an answer for them. But over time, I was thinking like, well, why would I retire? Because I kind of like doing all the stuff I like to do anyway. So like, why should I have a magical point in time where I'm just going to stop doing stuff because I'm already doing stuff that I like to do, right? So that became my mission. Like, hey, let's continue to find more stuff that I like to do. And as long as I'm getting paid to do it or finding ways to earn, money doing it, then who needs to retire, right? And that's kind of where this whole channel concept and my newsletter and all that stuff came from was kind of from that particular pivot. So again, this whole getting laid off or getting fired actually became a positive for me, because now, like I said, I feel retired, right? I'm not on anybody's schedule. I mean, it's not, there's plenty of ups and downs over the last 14 years. It's not all roses and ponies, but either way, it's just, I think it's making me, or it's made me way more versatile. And I don't want to say bulletproof, but because I don't think anybody's really bulletproof, but it's definitely given me a lot more resilience. It's just more sustainable as far as, going into the future. So anyway, I guess if you wanted to learn more about that, about that whole vibe, I've been kind of taking notes over the last 14 years, basically in my head, and just kind of learning things along the way. And if you're interested in learning more about, like how I was able to survive over the last, 13, 14 years, I do have something that I call the Gen Exit Playbook. And I put that in the show notes, so you can go grab that if you want, if you're super interested in finding out what it is that I've done over the last 14 years and kind of the philosophy I have around the whole situation. Yeah, just go check that out. And then I got one question for you before I let you go. So I spent 17 years at a company before basically, they walked me out the door. And I just wanted to ask you, do you think career loyalty is officially dead for Gen X, especially Gen X? Or do you think it's still worth the risk, of being employed, right? Or just having one income stream? Let me know what your take is below, and let's talk about it. There you go.